It was really exciting. I came in with a group because I served a Spanish-speaking mission. I served a Spanish mission in a primarily English mission. And so I came in with a group that I didn't know from the MTC. And so it was really fun to get to know them a lot right in the mission home. We were there for a couple of days before we went into the field. So it was really fun to get to know them and get to know the mission president a little bit. And they just gave us a little orientation. We all sat down in the living room, and he went over how to use the missionary funds and all these different protocols. And then we had an interview, I guess you'd call it an entrance interview, with the mission president. And then that evening, they told us where we were going to go and who our companions were going to be. And so that was really exciting. It was almost like getting the mission call all over again, because now I'm like, oh, I'm going to this place and it's so exciting, and I wonder who's going to be there, what's going to happen. And although at the same time I remember being slightly apprehensive because I'd never taught a real it before in my life. It had all been role play in the MTC or in a mission prep class. And so I was actually a little bit nervous, like, these are real people. I don't want to mess this up. You know, the stakes are a little bit higher now. If I mess it up, they might not accept the gospel, and then it's all bad from there. And so that was I was a little apprehensive of that, but it works out just fine. You're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. It happens. You know, you're a new missionary, and something my mission president taught me actually in my exit interview right before I went home, because I actually really struggled with that a lot. I kept dwelling on the mistakes that I had made, the stupid things I'd said. And he said, you know, the Lord allows us to learn from our mistakes, and He's okay with that. Because when we're there, we don't have much experience. We're just going to do the best we can, and it's not going to be perfect. What we need to do is learn from it and move on and be better because of that. And so that's something that I really wish I'd internalized before my mission, or at least at the very beginning when I'm making all these mistakes, because I really beat myself up a lot for that last year or so. And so just keep that in mind at the beginning and throughout your entire mission. It's okay to make mistakes, just learn from it. So in all, getting to the field, it was really exciting, and I loved it. It was a lot of fun, and it's a little bit hectic when you get in, you get settled, but it takes a couple hours maybe at the most, and then you just go teach a lesson, and it's awesome. It's the best thing ever to teach a real lesson and have it go super well. I actually still remember my first lesson. It was with a lady named Robin, and she had been taught a couple of times with my companion and who I was replacing. So we were teaching, I think we were still teaching the restoration though, but she was really ready for the restoration at that point. She'd been prepared. And it was really fun. It went really well. We had a member there, and it just went really well. We invited her to be baptized, and she accepted. It was super exciting. Sadly, it eventually didn't happen. And that happens. A lot of people just aren't ready, or they just, for whatever reason, won't accept it. And, you know, just pat yourself on the back and say you did your part, and it's all on them now. You can't make someone accept the gospel. That's not the way it works. They have to be ready, and they have to want it themselves. And there are some things that you can do to help them recognize that it's something they need. And that goes back to what I was saying about adapting to what they need. Because if you do that, then they can see that they need it. The South Dakota Rapid City mission is the biggest mission geographically, at least in the continental U.S. I think the Alaska missions are bigger, but it's one of the biggest even in the whole world. It's just huge. It covers the northeastern corner of Wyoming, full quarter of it. It covers probably about the top third of Nebraska, all the way across, the western third of Minnesota, all the way down, top to bottom, and it covers all of North Dakota and all of South Dakota. It even has just this little random bit of Montana, this little random sliver of Iowa. So total, it goes into 7 states, but really it significantly goes into 5. And so that makes it actually kind of fun. There's a lot of traveling, a lot of traveling. Our mission has, I don't remember the stats anymore, I think 20% more of the missionaries in our mission have cars than the average mission in the 48 states. Because we're so spread out, you just can't function without a car in most areas. You'd be too dependent on the members or someone to give you a ride. So most of the time you'll have a car. As far as history goes, there's actually a lot of cool history. In Casper, Wyoming, that's my first area actually. I love that place. And that's where the pioneers came through. All of the trails, the Oregon Trail, the Mormon Trail, all those western bound trails converge right where Casper is, because that's where the pass is, where it's most convenient to go through onto the west. And so the final crossing of the Sweetwater River is near there. I think it's within an hour of Casper. Martin's Cove is an hour away. I got to go there twice while I was there. And that was so cool. There's a really cool museum there about all those different trails. And so there's a lot of history in Casper. Then you got South Dakota, Rapid City, South Dakota. That's the headquarters. You got Mount Rushmore 20 minutes away. And the tradition is all the exiting missionaries go there. So the mission president takes all the missionaries that are going home and they go to Mount Rushmore the day before they go home. And that's just a lot of fun. And there's this really cool museum that they've got there. In North Dakota, just a fun little thing, it's in Rugby. There's a town called Rugby, and there's a monument there because that's the exact center of the North American continent. And so that's in our mission as well. Some other history. Those are all the significant bits of history that I can remember offhand. So that's really cool. The church is very spread out. The reason we're so geographically huge is because it's mostly farmland. It's mostly rural. So you got kind of a semi-big city, like 50-ish thousand, 70-ish thousand at the best. And that's usually where you're stationed. And you got all these towns all around that are like a few thousand, 10,000 maybe, people all just scattered around, and your areas are just huge. My last area was Dickinson, North Dakota. And we covered probably halfway up the state, all the way a little bit into South Dakota, just north to south, and then west to east it was relatively large as well. So you'll be driving a lot. And members are awesome. They're very helpful. They understand that we have to drive a lot. And often there's at least one member who's really willing just to drive you around to all these outlying places. Because you have limited miles on your own car. So you can't just drive out to these random places all the time. So you have a lot of help there, which is cool. So it's really spread out. Small wards, small branches. Right now there are, I believe, 6 stakes and one district. And I've been told it's the only district in the United States. I don't know for sure, but that's what I've heard. But the church is growing a lot. When I was there, 1 stake split. I think maybe 2. We had a lot of zones split because that's when all the influx of the missionaries came in. So there were a lot of zones splitting, and there was definitely 1 stake split. And that was in North Dakota. It's booming up there because of the oil field. So many people are moving in, and a lot of them are members. When I served in Williston about 2 years ago, in fact, 2 years ago is when I was transferred out of Williston. And 1 year ago, I mean. So that time there were 2 wards. There was Williston First Ward and Second Ward, and it split the city down the middle. And then Second Ward also had an outlying town named Watford City. And then 2 weeks after I got there, they split the ward so that Watford City had its own branch, and then they had to adjust the boundaries for first and second. And that was part of the Bismarck stake. Well, shortly after that, I think just 5 months after that, the stake split. So now there's a Minot stake and a Bismarck stake. And I just talked to a member recently, and soon there's going to be a third ward in Williston. And so the church is just growing like crazy in North Dakota because of the oil field and bringing in all those members. And the culture there is so great. It's always different in each area you go. Castro is almost like a little Utah because there's so many members there, so many wards, in a little town of 70,000 people, 8 wards. And so it was almost like serving in Utah when I was there. In Williston, the culture is a bit different because you've got all of these different people from all over the world coming in. And so you've got all these different cultures, all these different outlooks of life, all these different reasons for being there. And everybody just gets along. It's so cool. And there's just no judgmental anything. Nobody's very judgmental. Often, every single week, there was at least a couple of people that would come in their muddy work boots and torn up jeans and jackets and things because they only had an hour or two that they could get off of their work site drilling for oil and come to church to take the sacrament, and then they would have to go back to work. And so I think the members in North Dakota, are, at least in the oil field part of North Dakota, are very dedicated. And they have a lot of money and a lot of resources to help the missionaries, and so they do. They're just very missionary minded, and they're so excited to share the gospel with their friends, with the people that they work with. And like I said, people come from all over the world, and most of them are coming to start over. They're coming from wherever they were with nothing because of the economy, and they go to the oil field where they pay out the nose. And so they're just very humble people. They're very ready for the gospel, and it's so cool. That was my favorite area. Worthington, Minnesota is very Hispanic, mostly Guatemalan. And the members there are really cool. They're also very helpful, especially the Hispanics. They're very missionary minded, I found. And so the culture it varies from place to place, but in general, it's very spread out, and you've always got some people to help you out, and they're very willing to, and it's great. So I got to Sioux Falls a year ago, I think actually a year ago today. It was within a day or so that I got there, and it was a later winter, so it was actually kind of nice. For the first 2 weeks, it was around 60 degrees, and that was really nice. But then winter set in, and it got cold. It gets very cold in the South Dakota mission. I'm sure people will tell you that 100 times or more. But definitely it gets cold. And I was on the very eastern sliver of it. I served in a branch called the Brandon Branch. So you got Sioux Falls. From your perspective, you got Sioux Falls here. And then to the east, you have Brandon. It's like 10, 15 miles east of Sioux Falls. And so the Brandon Branch covers all these outlying towns, and then it just has this little eastern sliver of Sioux Falls, and so that's where I was. So my area was very long and very skinny. I could walk across my area in probably 30 minutes or less. But at the same time, I lived almost at the top, and it was really a struggle to get down to the bottom of the area just because it's so long. We had bikes, and so we could do that. And so day to day, I was actually opening the area. So for the first transfer, or half transfer at least, all we did was tract. We had almost no leads because the area had been shut down for, I think, a transfer and a half. So we had to find everybody ourselves. So we said, well, let's go tracting. So we knocked on every single door within walking distance, and then we started riding our bikes further south and knocking on all those doors. And that was a lot of fun. Tracting is hard. It's very hard because it's mostly rejection. But sometimes, and often enough, they're at least nice to you. And sometimes they offer you water if it's summer, hot chocolate if it's winter. And occasionally they'll let you in, they'll let you talk to them. And it's really exciting when that happens. So that was pretty much my day-to-day thing because I was in a new area, mostly tracting and just cold contacting people. By the end of my 2 transfers there, we got it going a little bit more. We had some regular investigators, and so we just plan out the day and say, okay, well, we've got an appointment at 7 o'clock. We need to find somebody, a member, to come with us. Oh, well, this member, I think, would really work well with him. And so we call him and they say, yeah, we can go. And so we take them to the appointment and they teach with us, and it's really great, and they make really great fellowshippers. And then later on we had a car about excuse me, half the time we had a car. And that's how it works in the mission, is there's so many missionaries and there's only so many cars, and so most of the time you're going to be switching between having a car half the week, and then the other half of the week it's somebody else's turn for the car. And so that's what we did. And that was nice. Half the week we could drive to the southern part of our area and get down there and do some work there. And so that was the day-to-day for me in a new area in Sioux Falls. It's a big city. It's between 200, 250,000 people. And it's a more professional city. Most of the mission is smaller cities, and a lot of it is oil field workers, coal workers, construction workers, more blue collar. But Sioux Falls, being a bigger city, was more white collar, I found. More steady 9 to 5 type schedules, which I didn't see too often outside of Sioux Falls. So that was kind of nice, but at the same time it made finding people in the middle of the day really hard to go teaching with us. And yeah, Sioux Falls is a good place. It's a fun place to go. It was a fun zone. Right now there's probably a good 6 or 7 companionships, and occasionally we would get together for a P-Day and play basketball at the Stake Center, or go play Ultimate Frisbee. There's a great Ultimate Frisbee course there. So as far as P-Day goes, there's a lot of good stuff to do because it's a big city, so they have all the fun city stuff to do, which is really great. So I'll start out talking about how the structure of the work is with Spanish work in the South Dakota Rapid City Mission. There's not very much of it, and so there's relatively few missionaries that Spanish called missionaries in the mission, because there's just not a huge demand for it. When I got there, I came in with 2 other Spanish-speaking missionaries, and there were a total of 2 trainers for them. So my trainer was actually an English-speaking missionary, because they just didn't have enough trainers for us. So Casper, Wyoming is a big Spanish area, and they actually have a branch there. It just started in February of this year, 2014. And I've been told, I haven't been able to check it out, but I've been told it's booming. It's almost big enough for a ward already. And then you've got Gillette, Wyoming. It's about 2 hours northeast of Casper. And there's some Spanish population there. I never served there. But that area has been off and on. It's been, I think it got closed twice while I was on my mission and reopened. So I don't really know what the deal is there. They've got a little group that's attached to a ward that meets, but it's got like 5-10 people in a good day. So the Spanish work there in Gillette's really difficult. I've been told really slow. And then Worthington, Minnesota is the next big place for Spanish. I said earlier that it's mostly Guatemalan, and that's definitely true. I'd say at least half or more are Guatemalan. They call them Chapinos or Chapines, and that's kind of like the slang word for them. And then the rest of them are mostly at least still from Central America, and you got some Mexicans and some people from South America, but it's mostly Central America there in Worthington. Williston, North Dakota has a pretty good Spanish population as well, and I was sent there in Williston to try to open up the Spanish work there because there is a population there. The trouble is it's really hard to find them because they all work in the oil field, and so they all work these random hours, but there's a lot of them there, and there's a lot of potential there for Spanish work. And so the way it works, the way my mission president, President Anderson, did it is you'd usually be in a Spanish area, but it's usually cover an English area as well. So you'd be assigned to an English area, and then you'd do Spanish work in that whole city, or if there's 2 sets of Spanish missionaries in half of the city. And then usually you'll end up in an English area to try to open up Spanish work or to see if there's Spanish work to be done. And you'll serve with a Spanish companion, but you'll definitely be serving with some English companions too. And that's just the way President Anderson did it, which is fine. You can still study on your own, you can still learn it, and it works out. And you can still preach the gospel in Spanish. And members are really helpful to try to help you practice if you ask them. And so some things that we did to help find Spanish-speaking or Spanish people is soccer. Hispanics love soccer. It's everything to them. So what we would do is we would set up a time and say, hey, we're going to play soccer. Invite your friends. And it worked out. When I did it, we only did it a couple of times, but the companion I did it with in a previous area, he did it in Casper, and they found tons and tons of people to teach through that, because they'd invite one of their Hispanic members to come play and say, hey, invite your friends. And they're like, oh yeah, I've got this friend, I've got this friend, I've got this friend, and they all come and play soccer. And it's just super fun, it's super relaxed, it's non-threatening. And then you usually play in your shirt and tie, and they're like, oh, well, why are you all dressed up? And you're like, oh, well, it's because I'm a missionary. I tell people about Jesus Christ. And they're like, oh, I love Jesus Christ. Let's talk about him. Hispanics are very religious people, or at least spiritual. A lot of them aren't very religious, but they are spiritual, and they love to learn about Christ. And so they're very, very open to hearing what you have to teach them. The culture, though, is very laid back and very non-committal, and so it's very difficult to get them to progress. They usually don't progress very quickly. I'm trying to think of an example. Usually when you're talking with an American, due to our culture, once they commit, once you actually get them committed to baptism and they're actually excited about it, they really progress really quickly, and it's usually within a month that they get baptized. It's different with Hispanics. With Hispanics, if they're really in their Hispanic culture and not Americanized, then they'll be interested and they'll keep inviting you back, but it may be 6 months or more before they get baptized, even after committing. And you'll usually have to put them on date, and then push back the date, and then maybe push it back again. But eventually they get there, and it's really great. The Hispanics, I think, are really great member missionaries. They, as a whole, I think, are more missionary-minded than American people are. Just because of their culture, they're just much more outgoing, much more friendly, fewer walls, lower walls. And so it's easier to get them to share the gospel with their friends and then to invite them to take the lessons. I mentioned that the Spanish branch in Casper is booming, and it's because of that. They have all these so solid members of the church that are Hispanic, and they say, oh, well, I've got this friend, this friend, this friend, this friend, and they take them all to church. I was in Casper for a time, and we were starting to get the branch ready to go. I was at least able to work on that. And one of the ladies we were working with said, hey, I have 47 referrals for you, but I will not give them to you until the branch is set up, until there's a place for them to come to church. And there's this other guy, he owns a construction company, and I think he's the branch president, actually. Yeah, he's the branch president. He owns a construction company in Casper. And one time the missionaries were calling around, and they talked to him, and he said, oh, you know what? I'm going to invite all of my workers to church. He had a trailer that they lived in. There was like 15 of them. And he just walks into the living room and says, hey, let's go to church. And they're like, okay. And they all came to church. And I don't know what happened to them. I wasn't there for that story, but they're just very missionary minded. They're so excited to share the gospel. They're so excited to talk about Christ. And it's the best thing ever. I love Hispanics so much because of that, because of their kindness. They're definitely much kinder than Americans as a whole. And so Hispanics are wonderful people. And That's about how the Spanish work goes in the Rapid City Mission. The South Dakota Rapid City Mission is a tracting mission. Some missions, particularly in Utah, tracting isn't very effective, and other missions as well. But it's a relatively effective thing in this mission. It's a thing to do in this mission. Our mission president once trained us on it. He said, "This is a tracting mission." So we tracked. And so one experience that I had, and I tell you this because you will meet many missionaries that hate it, and some will even refuse to do it because it is difficult. And it is the least effective way, but sometimes it is the only way that you will be able to find someone. Actually, he was a previous companion, but as his own leader, he said this. He said that if you find somebody and baptize them through tracting, then you can say to yourself that they would not have been found through a member. Sometimes tracting is the only way they will be found. And I had many great experiences. One in particular, I was a greenie. I'd only run the area a couple of times, actually I think once. And the zone leaders were doing exchanges with us because my companion was the district leader. And so I'm just this greenie trying to run my area with very little experience. And I'm kind of stressing out about it because it's not happening. No appointments, nothing. And so my zone leader and I are just walking down the street to some faraway place because we had time. And we were just going there because I thought maybe it would work out. And he just asks me, my zone leader asks me, "Hey, is there anywhere you think you should go?" And one family in particular had crossed my mind. And I thought, oh, well, maybe this family, but they're kind of out of the way and we'd have to go back. And he said, "Well, maybe it's the Spirit. Maybe we should go." I thought, well, okay, I guess we'll go. So we start walking that way. And as we get close to their house, I just look up at this other house. I think, hey, let's knock on this door. He said, "Okay, let's do it." So we knock on the door, and it's about 3:30, so kids had just gotten home from school. And this high schooler opens the door. We gave him our spiel, we're missionaries, and can we share with you a message of Christ? And he said, "Come back tonight at like 8 o'clock when my parents are home." And so we did. And we ended up teaching them and coming back and coming back. And they were ready to receive the gospel at that time. They didn't get baptized while I was there. They got baptized actually a year later. And that was so cool to find out because I knew that the Spirit guided that. And they were found through tracting. I don't know. I don't think they would have been found otherwise because we talked to the Word. We tried to find fellowshippers for them. And there was like one kid that kind of knew him, but not very well. We would not have found them if we did not tract. And so tracting is a good thing. And you will have good experiences if you do it. So just stick with that and you will have some success. When you have nothing else to do, you can tract and you will be successful. On my mission, I got to study the Book of Mormon a lot more than I did previously. And I've learned a lot more about it. I've come to realize that the Book of Mormon really does explain the gospel very, very well. And when it's used as a companion to the Bible, you can just understand it so much better than you can with the Bible by itself. And that's why we have it, is to restore the gospel, to restore the knowledge that was lost after Christ and the apostles were killed. Because a lot of that information that was in the Bible was lost in translation and otherwise. And so the Book of Mormon teaches us about those things that we still need to know that were taken out of the Bible. One example of this is the Atonement of Christ. I understand it so much more clearly because of the Book of Mormon. I feel like the Bible explains that it's important. I feel like the Book of Mormon explains why it's important. An example of that is Alma. He's teaching people about the atonement, and he tells them that because Christ had suffered in the Garden of Gethsemane, not only can he forgive us of our sins because he paid that penalty, but he also suffered for our experiences and our hardships, and because of that, he knows how to help us through that. And that's all part of the atonement. That's all part of the enabling power of the atonement. And the Book of Mormon explains that so clearly, and I love it for that. One of the big questions for someone who is learning more about the restored gospel, which is found in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, is, why do I need it? Why do I need this gospel? I've already got Christ. I've got the Bible. I read it, and my life is fine. I don't need more. But you don't know what you have. You don't know what you're missing. I'll tell you why that I'm so grateful for the gospel, and without it, I wouldn't be here. I wouldn't be the same person, and I certainly wouldn't be as successful as I am right now. An experience I had is about 6 years ago, yeah. My mom passed away. I was 15, and it was after a 2-year long battle, hard battle with cancer. She almost died a few times before she did. And it was hard. I'm not going to lie, it was hard to lose her, but I was able to deal with it. I was able to work through it, and it didn't mess me up very bad because of the gospel. There's something called the plan of salvation, which basically it makes possible for families to be together forever. And because I knew about that, it was okay. She was gone for the moment. I'll see her again. And if I didn't know that, that would have been a lot harder. But because I know about the plan of salvation, I know she's not even totally gone. She's still around. She's still there to support me. And it's good. And someday, after I die, I will see her again. And that's what keeps me going through that. That's what keeps me afloat, despite that loss. And so, that's why it's so huge for me. And I promise you, there's something, many things, in the gospel, in the restored teachings of Christ, that will support you, that will help you through life, that you will not find anywhere else. I promise you that there's nothing of greater value you will ever hear of or find in your life or in the next life than the fullness of the teachings of Christ. So the best thing you can do to receive a testimony of this is to study about it. In the Book of Mormon, in Alma chapters, I think it's 40 through 43, it teaches about the plan of salvation very well. And there are other resources on lds.org. And there's a really cool pamphlet that the missionaries can give you. Study about this topic and pray about it and fast about it. Ask God if it's true. Ask God how it can help you. And by doing that, you will come closer to Him. You will be more susceptible to the Spirit and able to receive an answer that it is true and that it can help you. And I promise you that it is, and that it will help you if you embrace it.
Craziest food you had on your mission?
All right. That's actually hard because English speaking, well, stateside, mostly English speaking, I didn't really have very crazy food. But occasionally I had some good Hispanic food, and none of it was really crazy. I could stomach it all very well. It all tasted good. My favorite dish, though, I think, was this soup. It's called sopa de res. I'm not even sure what's in it, but it was really good. There was some meat, some potatoes, some Hispanic kind of fruit thing. It was really good. I liked it a lot.
What was one of the most crazy or dangerous experiences you had?
All right. So, nothing terribly crazy, but one time I thought this drunk guy might jump us because we actually broke a rule. This is why you keep the rules. But it was a cold day, really windy, and we were just tracting. And this lady let us in. She was really young, probably 25, 27. And she just let us in. We just stood in the doorway and talked to her for a brief second. Turned out she was actually a member of the church. And so, anyway, then we left. And we wanted to come back when her husband was there. And that was the rule, is you're not alone with women. You're not supposed to be. And her husband wasn't there. And we went in the house anyway. So anyway, we came back like 2 weeks later to follow up, and hopefully her husband was home. Well, he was, but he was super, super drunk and super not happy that we had gone in the house. So they had some gathering going on, and he sent his wife inside like, oh, great, he's going to try to do something. So anyway, he was getting all up in our faces, just trying to intimidate us, but I was still a greenie, and so I was really like, oh shoot, like what's he going to do? And so I really thought he might jump us. And then he invited us back because he actually wanted to talk to us when he was sober, and I was so scared that whole time. But it turned out all right, and well, he wasn't interested, but he didn't jump us either, so that was good.
What was one of the most spiritual or important lessons you learned on your mission?
One of the most important lessons I learned on my mission was in the realm of leadership. In general, I just learned how to be a leader. And the thing is, you have to be loving with the people you're leading. I was a district leader a few times, and you've got to just be kind with them. You've got to be patient with them. You've got to understand them. Also, I learned something that was this, that you've got to first seek to understand the person, and then you can teach them, then you can help them. That applies to your investigators, your less active members you work with. That applies to your members you work with, and it certainly applies to the missionaries you lead, whether that's as a district leader or just as a member of the district or the zone, by example. You've got to understand them first and seek to understand them, and then you can help them, and they will trust you because of that.
What was one of the greatest skills you gained?
One of the greatest skills I gained as a missionary, I think, was to be more outgoing. Naturally, I'm very withdrawn in a new situation and with people I don't know. But now I'm able to just talk to people. Like before my mission, I would never just start talking to somebody at the gas station who was getting a drink. But now I'll be getting my soda. I'll just look over and say, hey, how's it going? And just make friends. And so it's really great. I'm a lot more outgoing and able to talk with people in that way.
What was one of the most spiritual experiences you had? The time you felt the Spirit the strongest?
Oh, it's hard. There's many of those situations. I think in the field, there were a couple of times where I just knew that the Spirit was guiding us. One time, we had set up to go on splits, so my companion was going to go with someone, and I was going to go with another member. Well, they both either forgot or didn't tell us that they weren't going to be able to make it, so we're up a creek without a paddle, and we're in an area that we weren't planning on working in, and we were on foot, so we had to work in that area for time's sake. And so we had nothing. So we tried to follow up on some people that we knew that were there, and nothing was working out. And then I thought, oh, there's this guy just down this street. Let's try him, because we hadn't been able to get a hold of him for a while. So we knock on his door, and he was home, which is a miracle. This was in North Dakota where everybody's always working. So he's home, and he said, elders, come in. How did you know you needed to come? I needed you today. And so we shared a lesson, and he just kept saying, like, how did you know that you needed to come? I thought, well, it was the Spirit. The Spirit set it up. And so it was really great. We got to give him a blessing, and he had a rough day, and it was really helpful for him. And so I knew that my companion and I knew that we were following the Spirit, and that we were able to be a tool in the Lord's hand. And that was really cool.
What is the craziest weather you had?
Craziest weather was 50 below wind chill. This was actually in Sioux Falls. Like I said, it's cold there. And indeed, it's very cold. The ambient temperature was usually, in the winter, there was a good portion of time, few weeks at least, where it was high of -10 ambient. And then you throw in the wind chill and it brings it down to -20, -30. Well, one time the wind was crazy, and it was -50. And you actually don't have to go out when it's that cold if you don't want. But we wanted to go out because we'd been inside all day anyway. So we're walking around in this 50-degree wind chill, and it was really, really cold. But it got us in a door. So all weather is good weather because it gets you indoors.
Best piece of mission prep advice you could give someone?
Best mission prep advice. Teach. If you can, go teaching with the missionaries. That's the best because that's actual experience. If you can't do that, at least just teach your family members, your friends, someone. Practice going through the lessons, practice adapting to their needs. And I think that will help the most.
The thing you admire most about the people you served on your mission?
The thing I admire the most is their willingness to help, especially among the Hispanics. Like I said, they're very missionary oriented. And the best way to become a missionary's favorite member is to give them referrals. And the referrals are actually kind of tough to come by, but people are always so willing to help out the missionaries. They're very missionary minded, especially among the Hispanics and especially among the people in the oil field.
Funny language mistake.
Funny language mistake. I actually don't remember offhand any really funny language mistakes. Sorry.
That's all right. One of the hardest experiences with you?
Hardest experience. So this was a really tough companion. You're going to have those. You got obedient missionaries, you've got very disobedient missionaries, and you've got some missionaries that are actually obedient, but they're just stubborn and difficult to work with. You've got a big span of those things, and so I was working with a companion that I just did not get along with. He was so hard for me to get along with, and he with me, and it was rough. I was with him for 3 months, and finally it all came to a head, and he basically just blamed the whole situation of our area, which was going downhill, on me. And oh man, that was really rough. I would say I was actually depressed for a few days as I dwelt on that, thinking that, oh well, maybe this is my fault. And so just working with him was very, very difficult for me, but it worked out. I got transferred, and then I saw him towards the end of my mission. I was in the neighboring district, and I saw him a few times, and we're good friends now. But in the time, that was a very difficult experience.
What's one of the best piece of advice you could give for someone, a returned missionary, just getting home?
A returned missionary just getting home. Just jump into life. Definitely seek to keep your habits. Don't just jump all the way back into this media and all this stuff you were doing before your mission, because you want to keep the changes you made on your mission, because that's huge, that's very important. But at the same time, you need to move on. Keep yourself busy. Go on dates and just jump in. If it's really hard for you, some people it's really hard. Sometimes for other people it's really not hard. It wasn't very hard for me. But if it is, just pray for strength and lean on your friends and your family, and just keep yourself busy with dating, school, work, whatever. Just keep yourself busy. The best advice I can give you is to put everything into your mission. Everything you can put into your mission, do it. Because the more you put into your mission, the more not only you will get out of it, but the more that those you serve around, and those you serve with will get out of your mission. And that's what it's all about. You're there to uplift people. And the more you put into it, the more you will uplift them. And just do your best. Don't beat yourself up when you make mistakes, because you're going to, and that's part of it. And just do your best and be happy with that, because you're a missionary and the Lord's going to support you. And it's such a great experience. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to feel the Spirit a lot. And you're going to come so close to your Savior. You're going to learn so much about Him. It's going to be awesome. People say it's the best 2 years. It's cliche, but it really is so great. It is an awesome, awesome experience. I can't even explain how awesome it is. You'll have to experience it yourself. So just get ready and hit the ground running, because it's going to be great. You're going to love it.
Arriving to the mission to South Dakota was a big shock to me, because I'm like, I'm actually leaving my family. But at the same time, it was calming, it was warming. The welcome the welcoming of my mission president and his wife and the other missionaries. That first day, we played games to get to know the mission president and his wife. We went through all the general things that needed to be done with the mission vehicles and everything else. And so we just got everything sorted out. Just welcome, had a nice dinner with the mission president. And then the mission president's like, all right, Elder, see you later. You're going out to your areas that same night. And so, and luckily I got to stay around the mission area, the mission home. It was really awesome. I didn't expect that at all. I just expected to go out and get started on my mission. But no, they eased us into the mission, and it was as simple as that. Got to know our companions who we were going to have, and they came and got us and went to our area, and it was wonderful. It was a great experience that first day. The first week had awesome companion, awesome trainer. He had a great spirit about him. It was hard work. That's what a mission is. It's hard work. But preparing for it, it also takes hard work. And that's one thing that my trainer taught me that first week is it's going to be hard to adjust. And it was a hard adjustment. But going to my meetings prior to my mission really helped. The overview of the Rapid City, South Dakota mission, it covers 5 states, now covers 4 because the Omaha, Nebraska has taken Nebraska, and so the remaining parts of the mission is 1/3 Minnesota, the western part, and then the 1/3 of Wyoming that just goes to Casper, and then all of North and South Dakota, and I believe it still has a little bit of Canada in there, but no one travels over the border. So there's not a lot of people there because it's not populated as much. So there's a big open square feet, and you can fit New York City and Chicago 10 times in those 2 states alone in North and South Dakota. Which I thought was a pretty interesting fact when I got there. I'm like, and I believe it. It's nothing but fields of wheat, corn, whatever. It's really awesome. It's beautiful. South Dakota is known as the President State because you got Mount Rushmore, Crazy Horse, and then you have Sturgis, which is the big bike rally they have. And the history there of Custer State Park, named after General Custer, which is really cool. I really enjoy the wildlife there. It's like Yellowstone National Park. You got all these beautiful parks there. And the history of the people, the museums and things like that, it's sort of based on Lewis and Clark as they were coming through there. The Pony Express and all that was through there. They have the Black Hills, so Black Hills gold is still really big there, and so the miners mine the black gold, and that's how they make their money and things like that back in the late 50s, 60s, and on in history. and it's a tribute to the presidents of the United States, from Abraham Lincoln's face, George Washington's face, and on Mount Rushmore. And so I thought that was really interesting and a lot of fun to see. I lived on an Indian reservation for about 3 months, and so for a transfer. And probably the most interesting food that I had, even here in the United States, it was cat. I'm like, okay, it's Indian reservation. I'm like, they eat it, anything and everything. Anything that has 4 legs, they will kill and they will eat it. Especially in the wintertime, because it gets super, super cold. And everything's dead by then. It gets down to negatives, 50s, plus 20 mile per hour wind, so it gets down to negative 70 at times. It gets pretty cold there. So yeah, that's probably the most interesting thing that I have eaten. Is I'm still in the United States, but I'm like, okay, eating cat. It's like awesome. Another one that I had was called Quail Soup. It was really interesting. It was a bird, but it was like a duck meat. It was really tender, really, really good though. I really enjoyed it because it had mixed vegetables, potatoes, carrots, onions. So like a stew like we would have here. And that's one of their main dishes, is quail stew. In my mission, it was really, really good. So as a missionary, spaghetti is obviously the number one for every family because it's quick and easy. But no, I had mostly casseroles or potatoes, corn, a lot of corn. I had a lot of corn and wheat kind of meals. Very simple, very fun. Sometimes the members, they'd just take us out. Most of the time, they'd just take the missionaries out because they knew how tight our budget was, and they loved helping the missionaries. And so it was a great, great experience for that. And yeah, just going over to members' houses and being fed. There's no harm in that. We always love food, so never go hungry. Cool. So those were pretty much the main dishes, was casseroles and spaghetti. And so I remember one family, they're like, oh, you guys are sick of casseroles and sick of spaghetti, so we're having a different meal tonight. And I'm like, okay, what are we having? You know, he's like, we're going to have buffalo burgers and chips and all these different interesting meals. He's like, no, I didn't feed you buffalo. I fed you skunk. I'm like, skunk? I'm like, oh man, that's great. Like, you know, that's not bad. I'm like, okay, that was great. Like, never had skunk before. Loved it. One of the main attractions for South Dakota is actually a hotel. One of the miners, he owned his own hotel while he was working on the faces of Mount Rushmore. His name is Alex Johnson Hotel, who settled the area. And so that hotel is really famous. That sits downtown in Rapid City, which is their main city, the biggest city in South Dakota, which I got to serve in for about 3-4 months, which was really awesome. Transportation wasn't too bad. Everyone drove their own cars, had their had their own deal, of way of living life. What I thought was really interesting is the state prison's right there downtown center. So you drive by the college and then you drive by the prison. It's just like this little slot, and it's just sitting there. I'm like, awesome. It's like, all right, they're not getting out. Of course not. It's great. It just made me laugh every time I drove past it, because I'm like, there's the prison and there's the school like about a mile down the road. And like, all right, there's college kids here, and then there's the prison right there in the middle of the town. I thought that was pretty interesting to me. They have the bus system for people who actually can't afford a car or can't afford to pay anything. So there's like a free system there for a bus transit, which I thought was pretty cool. That's nice of them. And then on every corner of the street is every president that have served in term with their own statue head on every corner of Main Street as you drive down. So from Washington to President Bush, they have their own statue for them. So I thought that was pretty neat, pretty intriguing. A very touristy town, because that's what it is. South Dakota and up to the Black Hills it's a big tour place for people to come and tour all over the world. And I really enjoyed that because the lifestyle brought in a whole mix of culture, from Native American, which is more dominant there, which is in both of the states, but people from all over the place, all over the world, come and see Mount Rushmore and the city, and it's open late, and traffic, walking is wonderful as a missionary, because you have the opportunity to go and talk to all these people and stop them on the street, or they'll stop you and ask what you're doing as a 19 to a 21-year-old. And I thought that was great. It was wonderful. Then the fact about North Dakota, it's the sunflower state. Just fields and fields of sunflowers, which is really pretty, which I would never have thought sunflowers would have grown up there. And I'm like, those are big sunflowers. So one time, me and my companion, we stopped along the side of the highway, and we decided to get out, and we wanted to pick a sunflower. So I got up to the pod, and this sunflower covered my face. That's how big this thing was. They're huge, and it was great. And then we decided, we'll just drive. So we just took pictures, and so it stood about 6'3", 6'4", the stalk of this sunflower. And so that, I thought that was pretty cool. Called the Sunflower State of North Dakota. North Dakota has the Bismarck Temple, and that was our only temple for our district, for the surrounding area. Another interesting fact about North Dakota is the weather changes every 5 seconds, from sun to cloudy to rain to snow all year round. So you don't know what you're going to get every 5 minutes. The weather's changing. And so I thought that was pretty interesting living there. Because I'm like, it's winter time. It stays winter. But the sun's out. But it's still -30 outside. So really exciting. So I enjoyed that. The lifestyle of the people in North Dakota is just mostly reservations for people. Their trouble was drinking, a word of wisdom, and things like that. But very kind people. The people there are very helpful. If you need something, they will do anything to help you out. They will give you their clothes on their backs that they have to help you out. The people are very genuine people. Very loving. I came to love the people there when I served. That's about it on the facts about the people. They're wonderful. So one day, me and my companion, we were tracting down the street, and this couple, they come down, they see us tracting, and it was around Halloween time, and they're like, "Hey, others, you want some candy? You know, I know you're not allowed to trick or treat," so they gave us a bag of candy, and about five minutes later, we're still tracking, and this squirrel, called this story a pet squirrel. We're tracking, the squirrel starts following us, and my companion's like, come on, let's get rid of it. And he's like, he's making me lose focus. I'm like, Elder, just forget about it. It's just a squirrel. So he turns around, he opens a Snickers bar. He hands the squirrel, like literally the squirrel comes up, takes the Snickers bar right out of his hands, and starts eating the chocolate Snickers bar, and it's just the little cubed ones. And it was the funniest thing. And it followed and it kept following us. So we're just like, all right, fine. We'll just let it follow us. So it followed us all the way. We got into our car to go back home. It was time to go, and it was done. And so we get home, and the next morning there's a squirrel sitting on our doorstep. And he's like, and my companion's like, Elder Potter. I'm like, what? The squirrel's back. I'm like, fine, why don't you name him something? Then he'll run away. He never came back. And it was really funny. It's just, so I had a pet squirrel on my mission. It was really awesome. I wanted to keep him, but he went away. So this is great. I got to the mission, and there's this lady that we were teaching, and she had a couple of kids that were really troubled because their father was in jail. And as me and my companion, we kept going over there and teaching her the gospel. The light of the house, it began dark, but I could see a change with her willingness to becoming a member of the church, and her conversion was a blessing to me, to see the power of the priesthood being in and out of the home. and being consistent with that. It was difficult for her because of the lifestyle that she was living at the time, and the happiness. It was partial happiness because her husband was not around. And the greatest motivation that I saw was her kids, to help her to come to church and to really feel the Spirit, to have her own testimony of a witness of Jesus Christ. After a few weeks of visiting with her and her children, she came to church for about 3-4 weeks, and then she started tailing off a little bit. And so we go over, me and my companion, and we ask her what's going on. We're concerned about you. And she's like, my child has just ran into the law, and she's only 12, and she's acting out, and I had the impression to just sit down one-on-one and talk with her oldest child, and I figured out why she was acting this way. Because she couldn't get her child to talk to her. And that concerned me. Every family should be able to talk to each other about the times that they're going through. And it's because her father was in jail. And as I was talking with her daughter said, Elder Potter, you're like a second father to me, because you understand and you care for what I'm doing. I don't have a father around to see me to go through school, see how I'm struggling. And to be a missionary in that situation and teaching the plan of salvation, the gospel, to that family changed me to understand how important families need to stick together. Yeah, we have them for eternity, but we need to be there and now to make sure we can get through everything together. They are our strong point. If we're dealing with something heavy, go to them. Ask them for help. Don't run away from it, because that's going to get you nowhere. And that was my conversion, was to go to my mission president. If there was something bothering me, I'd go ask him for help, and then take it to the Lord, and become converted unto the Lord more carefully. And that way he can guide me in what did I need to say at that very moment to that family. And even to my companion. That is the sole purpose, is bringing people unto Christ. So when I opened my mission call, I had no idea where I was going to serve. Honestly, it didn't really matter. Because when I opened my mission call and I saw I was going to Rapid City, South Dakota mission, or any mission, I want you to remember that the mission call was for you, divinely directed from Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ. That moment was overwhelming, and I knew that was the mission for me. I had no doubt in my mind there are people waiting for me because I'm worthy to go and serve as the Lord's missionary, as His servant to Him and to His children to feed thy sheep. That was the greatest calling that I could ever have gotten in my life. As a young teenage 19-year-old going out and serving the Lord with a full purpose of heart, my whole might, mind, and strength unto my Savior, because I love Him. And I have a testimony of Him that it is His work to bring those unto Christ. Remember, pride brings down all spiritual things. Remove that pride from your heart and purify your heart with love, with the love of God, and love those that you serve. And your mission will change you and change those forever. I testify of that with a willing heart and a willing mind. Do all that you can do, and the Lord will bless you. I know that to be true. There is no greater call than to serve your Heavenly Father with a diligent and obedient mind. That's the key, is obedience. The Lord is training us and training you to be obedient unto His commandments that He has given to us physically and spiritually. That is where your great success lies, is through your own obedience unto your Savior. I testify, if you are obedient to everything that your mission president says, and you do it with exactness, you will become a fruitful missionary, and your life will unfold, and it will change you for the good. Now there's this one quote that I've lived by through my whole mission, and I still live it today. No man can be two-faced and live within his heart. Let me explain that. No man can serve God, and no man can serve Mammon, Satan, and be happy in his heart while they're serving a mission or throughout life. You have to choose the good or the evil. There is no fence sitting. And boy, am I glad that I chose to go serve a mission. It has changed my life. And I have seen the life-changing experiences in other people's lives for the good. I know my Savior lives. I know He atoned for each and every one of us. I understand that missions are super important for each and every one of us. We have our own plan through Heavenly Father, which He has given us the plan of salvation, which we can return and live with Him again. I know the importance of families. I know Thomas S. Monson is a prophet, and he calls you to the part of the world that ye are supposed to go through divine revelation. I'm grateful to be a part of this work. Go forward with faith. And stand in holy places. Be thy servants to the best that you can be, and the Lord will bless you. I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.